Hey guys, it's Adam here, and I'm here as always with Beardy. Plot twist, we've discovered Beardy is actually a girl. And so, since Beardy's not a good girl name, we've renamed her now. So meet Alex Straza, or Alex for short. And our little Beardy burrito here is just fresh out of the bath, so we're getting ready to put her back in. But in today's video, we're going to be talking all about the lights. So not only am I going to show you how to set everything up properly for a bearded dragon, but I'm also going to give you some tips on how to set it up in the most naturalistic way possible. Stick around for the end. We got about a 2-inch hornworm that we've been wanting to feed her as a treat for being such a good sport for these videos. So if you want to catch that, stick around for the end, and I hope you enjoy. Alright, I'm going to start off by going over some of the basics of the setup. If you guys are more advanced reptile keepers, you can skip ahead to the product review on the UVB light or the advanced setup part. I'm going to put some timestamps down the description. Feel free to jump ahead, but if you're just getting started in the hobby, we're going to cover some basics on how to properly set up a bearded dragon enclosure with the lights. Now, lighting is probably one of the most, if not the most important part of your setup for a healthy bearded dragon. These guys are desert dwelling species from Australia in the desert, and they like it nice and toasty warm. They like lots of UVB. I lived in the outback for 2 years plus, and I will say 350 days out of the year is no clouds in the sky, sun. Summertime temps can reach in excess of 140 degrees, and these guys are from that area. They're used to that type of environment, so when you're setting up your lights, it's important to mimic their natural habitat. Now I'm using a 40-gallon Zoo Med breeder tank. It's historically known as the minimum size tank for an adult bearded dragon. Depending who you ask, they might say 75 gallon is the minimum. Some people even say 120 gallons is the minimum. All I'm going to say about that is if you can afford a bigger enclosure, go right ahead. Your bearded dragon will probably enjoy the extra space. The reason that we have a 40-gallon enclosure minimum is because that's the size tank that you can get a proper heat gradient from one side to the other. And the reason for this is lizards and such are cold-blooded species, which means they can't self-regulate their body temperature. If they're feeling cold, then they need to go to a warmer area to raise up their body temperature. If they're feeling too hot, they need to get to a cooler spot to cool their body down. So with a proper heat gradient, they can self-thermoregulate. You need to give them options. So on the hot side of the tank here, you're going to want an ambient temperature of 95, somewhere between 90 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the air temperature, not a surface temperature. Now in the hot spot, you're going to want to give them a surface temperature between 105 and 115 degrees. Now to properly measure a surface temperature, you're going to want some sort of infrared heat gun to accurately measure that. And they will use that spot usually first thing in the morning when they're trying to warm up quickly, or after they eat a nice meal. They'll want to get that belly heat. It aids in digestion. So the heat is very important for digestion. The UVB is very important for metabolizing their different nutrients and stuff that they need for proper development in their bodies. So 110, 115, that may seem kind of hot, but you know, in the outback of Australia, you get those super high temperatures. You're not going to scorch your dragon at 115 degrees. And now, granted, they're not going to be basking out in midday sun in the outback. Usually they'll find some sort of burrow or cave or something to get out of the intense heat. But they are capable of handling those temperatures, so it's good to give them that option. Cool side, you're going to be looking around 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a good cool side temperature. So you're looking at a 15-degree gradient from the hot side to the cool side. Nighttime temperatures, as long as your room does not get below 65 degrees Fahrenheit, there's going to be no need for additional heat. If your room does drop below that, you're going to want to look into some kind of supplemental heat as far as a ceramic heat emitter. A ceramic heat emitter, it looks like a light bulb, but it emits no light whatsoever, it just emits heat. So you're aiming for a nighttime temperature around 75 degrees. That's good room temperature usually in a house. There's no need for additional heat. Definitely no lights on at night. You're trying to create a day and night cycle, which is normal for them in their habitat. It creates naturalistic behavior in your animal. So it's good to give them 12 to 14 hours of light during the day and, 10 to 12 hours of nighttime darkness so they can sleep. So here I have my heat bulb. I bought this tank as a kit, the starter kit, and I don't necessarily recommend buying a starter kit when you're first starting out. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I figured everything I needed was in there. And I'll tell you, if you can look in this enclosure, the only thing that I'm using from that original kit is the tank itself, which is the most expensive part, and this double dome light fixture that came with it. I mean, you can pick those up for 20 or 30 bucks. They're not really that expensive, so don't feel like you need to buy the kit just for the lights, for sure. But buy everything individually. Now, this dome dish came with a 100-watt basking bulb as a spot bulb. And then on the other side, you're supposed to have the 10.0 UVB coil light. Now, I'm not currently using it for that. I upgraded to this other UVB light over here, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit later. But basically, with your lighting, the spotlight gives a very direct beam of light. And so it creates a very hot area directly underneath that. In this case, I'm right here on this rock right here. That's the basking area. And if you get right in this region here, that's where our real hot spot is there. You're talking probably 110 to 115 degrees right there. But as soon as you move outside of that direct beam of light, your temperatures go down significantly. The other side, I put a regular incandescent bulb. That's a 60-watt bulb. Now, that's going to give more of a spread out heat. And the reason I went with that now is because I was able to achieve my good basking temps, but once I was outside of the basking area, the heat really was only around 80 to 85 degrees on the hot side. So with this addition of the extra incandescent bulb, it just kind of bumps up those temperatures a bit on the hot side. So right now I'm sitting around 90, 95 degrees when both lights are on. And you just need to watch with those incandescent bulbs. You need to read the box very carefully. So even though this is a 60-watt bulb, it's an efficiency bulb, which is just kind of what I had laying around. That's why I used it. But the actual wattage of that bulb is only 43 watts. So the 60-watt equivalent, what that means is that's how much light it's producing. So it's producing the same amount of light that an old school incandescent 60-watt bulb would put out, but it's only needing to use 43 watts to achieve that amount of brightness. So wattage is actually equal to heat. So this is actually only 43 watts of heat. So together I have a combined wattage of 143 watts on this side over here. If you were in comparison to get an LED light, you can get a 60-watt equivalent LED light, and it's probably only using around 7 or 10 watts to achieve that amount of light. If you put your hand up to an LED light, it doesn't put off a whole lot of heat because it's only using 10 watts of power. So LED lights do not make good heat lights. So just keep in mind, the wattage of your bulb depends how much heat you have. And I use the 143 watts. That does the trick for me. Depending on where you live or the size of your enclosure, you might need more or less. So that's why it's important to make sure your temperatures are correct at the correct spots. So this is my setup. Your setup might be totally different with a different amount of wattage heat to achieve your goals. And again, my cool side used to only be around 75 on a good day. Now I'm up there around 80, which is where you'd like it. So I use that additional heat for that. Now those coil UVBs that come with the kit, They get a bad rap. A lot of people say they're not adequate. They don't do the job. You're not going to be able to get the right amount of UVB for your lizard with those coil UVBs, and you always have to have the linear tube UVB no matter what, no exceptions. And I will say I disagree with that. Not completely, but you just need to understand how these lights work. So a coil UVB gives kind of a direct beam of UVB similar to the spotlight. So your bearded dragon needs to be directly underneath that light in order to get the benefits of the UVB from it. The manufacturers recommend that your lizard be within 6 to 8 inches of that light in order to be getting the correct amount. In most situations, it's hard to get your bearded dragon that close. Now with my rocks, you can see that's up there pretty good. How we actually set Alex up with the lights originally, and Alex was on that coil UVB for probably the first 11 months of her life, and she did just fine with that. But what we did was we put a hammock in the corner that was up pretty close to the light, and that's pretty much where she stayed. So with it being side by side in this double dome dish like this, the basking spot is right underneath the UVB. So as long as you're within that 6 to 8 inches, your bearded dragon is getting the proper UVB that it needs. Now just keep in mind, if you're using the mesh top, which a lot of the commercial enclosures have these days, that mesh is actually going to filter out up to 33% of those UVB rays. So if you do the math, the coil UVB on a mesh top, you need to be within 4 to 6 inches of that light, which in most enclosures that I've seen, that's not where people are keeping their bearded dragons. So that's kind of where you get the bad rap with the coil UVBs. You have to be directly underneath it, and you have to be within 6 inches max in order to get the proper benefit from it. With the linear tubes, so this is a T5 tube, 24 inch. It is more of a broad area that it covers, so it's kind of like a cone. So as you get further away from that tube, it's spreading out the area that it covers. Get a shot of that right there. So you're getting a wide area of coverage. And they recommend with the tubes that you cover 2/3 of the enclosure with that UVB. So now I'm using the 40 gallon. It's 36 inches wide. I have a 24 inch UVB tube. If you had a 75 gallon, which usually measures 48, then you'd want a 36 inch to cover 2/3 of the enclosure. And the manufacturer recommendations for distance is between 12 and 18 inches from the light. So you can see in an 18-inch high enclosure, even if Alex is right underneath that light on the bottom of the floor, she's still within that range of getting the proper UVB that she needs. So it works out really, really well that your bearded dragon can move anywhere in the enclosure except for the corners and still be exposed to the UVB. So you're making sure that your bearded dragon has access to it all the time. Of course, you want to realize that the same with the heat. Your bearded dragon will want to regulate the amount of UVB that it's getting. So you're going to need places for it to get away from it. So you can see with my cave here, she can get in underneath there, and you see the shade, she can get away from it there. Underneath these sticks, she can get in behind there and get shade. And of course, the cool side hide, which they recommend as well, is a place where she can get underneath and get out of the UVB and also the heat if she really needs to. So again, they will self-regulate how much UVB and how much heat they need, and the idea is to give them options so that they can get away from it if they want to. And you'll kind of notice how everything's sort of angled. So she can get up on that flat rock and get all the heat she needs at her hot spot. If she gets a little bit warm and she wants to get down, she can angle on this log a little bit. She can get all the way down on the bottom. And you can see where she's sitting right now. She wants to be warm, but not too warm. So that's around 95 degrees, 90, 95 degrees. That's where she's comfortable right now. If I feed her some bugs right now, she'll probably come out here and eat her bugs, and then she'll head right up to that hot spot to get that belly heat for digestion. She'll sit up there for maybe half an hour, and then she'll probably come down her log and be basking a little bit on there where it's not quite as hot, but she can get that UVB. So this is the ideal setup, guys. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine looks, but now that you know the temperatures and everything that you need to hit, you can be creative. You can set your tank up however you want. But I do recommend the coil UVB be upgraded at some point to a 2 UVB. And the sooner you can do that, the better off your dragon's going to be. UVB does help metabolize vitamin D as well as other things, but vitamin D is extremely important for bone development. And when you're talking about a juvenile bearded dragon just starting to grow, they're growing a lot, that vitamin D is very crucial for bone development and growing. So you'll definitely have a more healthy dragon in the long run if you switch to the tube UVB as soon as you can. So that's the basics, guys. And I'm going to move on now to this UVB light and do a product review on it. So for the UVB light, I'm excited to have finally gotten this Reptisun UVB 24-inch. It also has LED grow lights built into it. Now, if you're not planning on putting any live plants in your enclosure, you don't need to go with the LEDs. Those are just strictly for plant growth and terrarium lighting in general. The UVB is for obviously the lizard itself, and that does absolutely nothing for plant growth. That's just for your dragon. So this is a combo unit. I'm hoping to at some point go to a bioactive setup. I'm not there yet, but I do occasionally put some live plants in the tank. This past summer I had some mint and basil in there, and I have some cactuses that I'm propagating that I hope to pop in there as well, and I'm hoping that those LEDs are going to help with the growing of those plants and keep them alive a little better. And if you notice these hanging lampstands, that is the ZoomEd reptile lampstand. They come in a large and a small. This is the large, which is good up to an enclosure with 24-inch sides. They're completely adjustable, and they have this base, this 8-inch base that goes directly under the terrarium, and that's how it's held up. So you can see you can adjust the height, you can adjust the depth of those, and you know, you can put your cords and stuff right down the side, nice and neat like that. I got one for each. So this LED light, I'm very happy with it. I've had it for about a month and a half. It's got a nice, very solid construction. It's all metal. It comes with a couple different options for mounting. I'm using the steel cabling to hang it. You can put it directly onto the mesh top. I did have it originally on the mesh top, and the only thing I didn't like about it was those red lights were making kind of a weird pattern on the basking area. It was like a grid pattern, some kind of reflection off of the wire mesh. So that's why I took it off. Plus, now I don't have any kind of filtration on my UVB. I got a direct UVB right into the enclosure. So I took that mesh top off. If you have a melamine enclosure or something like that that you want to mount directly to the ceiling, there's mounting brackets for that. You can see those tracks. The mounting brackets slide right into those tracks. And additionally, there's these little clips that came with, plastic clips that you can clip right onto the side of your enclosure, just like this, and they slide right into that tracking. Now these only go out about 3 or 4 inches on either side, so for my 48-inch enclosure I wasn't able to use the clips to clip on the top. But let's just say you had the 36-inch light, which they do make, you could clip it right onto the top of the enclosure, nice and neat. Now these are made of plastic. I'm not too impressed with the quality of those, but other than the clips, everything else is actually really, really well made. I paid, I believe, $110 for this light, which is not cheap. But those LEDs in there are rated for 20,000 hours, which I believe comes out to about 4 to 5 years before you have to replace them. So it's good quality light, and all the reviews I read on it, they do quite well for plant growth, which is the reason I got this particular one. And they take the T5 bulbs, 22-inch T5 bulbs in those. So the as far as the LEDs go, there comes in 3 colors: the white, the red, and a blue. Now the white and red are meant for plant growth. So the white ones are in the color spectrum 6500 Kelvin color temperature. So when you're talking about grow lights, there is a lot of information on the internet. I've done quite a bit of research and I still don't think I've really gotten down to a lot of the details, but my understanding of them is with a 6500K light, that will cover a full spectrum of light that plants need to grow. But when you go to the LED versions of 65K, there's a little bit of weakness in the red spectrum, which is very important for plant growth. There's not a whole lot of red light coming out of them, but lots and lots of blues, and of course the other colors, the greens and stuff that you need. So those red lights that are added are meant to fill in some of the gaps. So the red light spectrum on this is, I believe, 640 nanometers, or however they read that. 640 whatever, that's the part of the color spectrum that they run at. They are also for plant growth, and they make a full spectrum between the two. So if you're planting this terrarium, you would want the red and the white both on together. Now just the white puts off quite a bit of light, and you can use it just to light up in a terrarium, and they do a good job of that. Now the blues are not related to plant growth at all. The reason the blues are in there is because this is kind of a universal light for general terrariums. So if you had some sort of nocturnal species that you'd want to light up at night, you just flip on the blues, and it's pretty cool. I'll show you in a minute what it looks like, but it's a pretty cool, almost looks like a black light that would light up something, say for like, you know, one of those glow-in-the-dark scorpions or something. It would be pretty cool to light up the tank with the blues. But with the bearded dragon, you don't want any nighttime lights, so I don't use them at all. I did turn on the blues just to see if it made a difference in the color of the tank, and it really does not make any difference. You can't see them, so I just leave those off. And in a minute here, let me just shut off my lights in the room, and I'll just show you the different settings on this just to give you a feel for what kind of light this thing puts out. It's actually pretty impressive compared to the dome light I had before. And all the switches and stuff are here on the side for all the different lights. So let me just show you the different settings in the tank. So I'm going to turn these off here. That's for the blue. So this is just the UVB. Let me shut these off as well. So this is just UVB light and nothing else. And here's quite a bit of light there. Then let me shut this off, and I will do just the white. This is just the white LEDs, and you can see there's quite a bit of light coming out of those guys. That does a really good job of lighting this terrarium up. It's pretty bright. And I'll switch to just the red. So these are just the red LEDs. Oh, I'm sorry, that's red and white. Oh, I can't do just red. Sorry, this is red and white together. And you can kind of see there's a reddish hue that goes around the edges. And when I first plugged this in and turned it on, I was scared because I didn't like this color. And I'll show you in just a minute. That gets pretty washed out with the UVB tube. So that's the red and the white. Now here's just the blue, and that's pretty sick. I like that a lot. It's unfortunate I don't have a nocturnal species that I could use that for, but it lights it up pretty good, and you can see that at nighttime. That would be pretty cool if you had some kind of critter that was running around during the night. You could see it pretty well in there. So now I'll switch that to this is the red and the white LEDs only, and then I'll flip on the UVB, and you can see a lot of that red is already faded out. You can still see around his basking area there, you can still see some of the red. But I'll show you now, if I flip on my heat lights, that red is unnoticeable completely. And now I'll just show you underneath. You can see those lights are on. Let me turn the blue on. You can't see any difference at all with the blue, but you can see they are on, so I just leave those off completely. So you can see the amount of light this thing puts off is pretty awesome. I'm very happy with this light. Give it 2 thumbs up. Product review there. If you're considering buying it, there's different ones online to buy it, but if you're going bioactive or planted tank, you're going to need some kind of grow light. This is all built into one. Nice sleek design, and I'm very happy with it so far. So stay tuned, and I'll show you some pretty cool things that we can do with this setup that's going to mimic nature coming right up. Alright, so here's the meat and potatoes, guys. This is one of the coolest ideas I found out there to mimic nature, and the credit goes out to I believe it was Northern Exotics. Don't quote me on that. I don't know him personally, but I want to give him a shout out because he's the one who gave me this idea. But I'll explain his idea and show you how I sort of used his idea to make my current setup. And honestly, I think this is going to become an industry standard coming up in the future, because I found nothing even close to that mimics the natural cycle of a day. So imagine a light setup. Instead of with the LEDs, you would have 2 T5 tubes. That was his setup. And I haven't really mentioned light timers before in this video, but guys, if you don't have light timers, go out and buy one. They're not that expensive, and they make everything just so much easier. If you ever go away, you know your lights are going to come on and go off when they're supposed to, and it just takes the headache out of trying to make sure that you're getting a good routine going with your bearded dragon. Always have light timers to make sure everything comes on. But basically, he had a 10.0 UVB tube in the one slot and a 5.0 UVB tube in the second slot, which is not very common for reptile enclosures, but you can find them in, you know, some aquarium stores and stuff with the double tube UVBs. So what he did was, first thing in the morning, obviously his heat lights would come on, and then he would just have his 5.0 UVB light come on. Then about an hour or two later, with his timers, the 5.0 UVB would go off and the 10.0 UVB light tube would come on. Then maybe an hour or two later, the 5.0 would come on and the 10.0 would stay on. So now you have both tubes on, a 10.0 UVB and a 5.0 UVB light on. That would come on in the middle of the day for maybe an hour or two. Then we would just reverse this cycle back down through. So then, you know, an hour or two later, the 5.0 would go off, just the 10.0's on. A little bit later, the 10.0 would go off and the 5.0 would stay on. And then at the end of the day, of course, everything would go off completely. So if you can imagine for a second, just you're in nature, the sun comes up in the morning, you know, you got some light, some UVB. As the sun goes up high in the sky at noon, you're going to have tons and tons of UVB. You know, if you've ever been to the beach and forgot your sunscreen, you know, midday is when you're going to get toasted the most. That's when the sun's at its high point. And then as the sun goes back down at the end of the day, your UVB levels are going down considerably at the end of the day till it's gone completely. So great idea, awesome situation. You know, the closer you can get to nature in your enclosure, the more naturalistic you're going to see your bearded dragon behaving. You're going to see all those natural behaviors coming out in your bearded dragon. So what I did, I don't have that exact setup, but I tried to mimic that as close as I could. So I have 2 timers, 2 plugs in each timer, and I have my 110 watt spot beam and my UVB on the one timer, and I have the incandescent bulb which you can see if I can. There it is there. And my LED grow lights are on the other timer. So what I do for Alex here, 7:30, the spotlight and the UVB come on. Then at 9 a.m., I have the incandescent bulb and the grow light LEDs come on. They come on at 9. So all the lights are on from 9 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. At 6:30 p.m., the incandescent light goes off as well as the LEDs go off. And then at 8 p.m., the spotlight and UVB go off. So Alex is getting heat and UVB for 12 and a half hours of the day. And then for around 7 hours of the day, he's getting more intense heat and more intense light. Of course, my plants, they probably don't need 12 hours of grow lighting happening. I don't know, we'll have to see once I get plants in there if that's the truth or not. But it's mimicking a day cycle, just that much more than just having your lights on 12 hours a day. It's getting more intense as the day goes on, and it's slowing down slowly at the end of the day. So what does that equal? More naturalistic behaviors. When the lights come on, Alex oftentimes crawls up on her hot spot there, gets that heat going, gets warmed up for the day. And, you know, my son usually leaves for school around 8:15, and I usually make sure that he feeds Alex her greens. She usually doesn't eat them right away. Usually she'll come down later in the morning and eat her greens, which is usually when the sun's up. All the lights are on. And then she'll go up and bask a little bit, hang out on the log, hang out down where she is now. More towards evening, you know, she's got her UVB for the day. She's usually chilling here in the front later in the morning. Or I'm sorry, later in the evening when she's kind of got the UVB she needs for the day but still wants to stay warm. I'll feed her bugs usually around 5:30 when I get home from work. And then that gives her a good hour with the lights still on full blast to aid in digestion. You know, you want to give them a good hour to digest their food before the lights go off. So around 6:30, the extra heat goes off and the grow lights go off. It kind of gives her a signal. Things are winding down for the day. And I'll usually find her around 7:30. She'll be up on her basking rock with her head laying on that log in the back, settling down for the evening, waiting for the lights to go off. That's usually where she sleeps then. So this is a great idea, guys. Like I said, I think this is going to be the industry standard coming forward. You heard it from me. Let's say second. Okay, it wasn't my original idea, but I'm just sharing this with you guys because I think, you know, if there's any way you can do something like this, absolutely go for it. It's been working out really well for me, and I just wanted to pass along to you guys. So thanks for sticking around. I'll be right back with Alex. All right, guys, thanks again for sticking around. As promised, I'm going to feed Alex one of our hornworms. Got one of these big guys here. She just turned 1 a few weeks ago, so we treated her with some hornworms. She never had them before. And I will say she absolutely loves these things. They're like little candy gummy worms. She's eyeballing them right now. Go ahead, Beardy. Oh, man. Oh, guts going everywhere. Down the hatch. Oh, man. She did really good for this video. She's usually flared up and like hissing at me because I'm talking so loud. But she did good. Good job, Alex. We love you. Thanks again for sticking through. I hope this was really informative for you. If you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments down below. And if you have any tips or tricks for me that I didn't think of, I try to cover everything I know, pass it on to you. Feel free to let me know. I'd love to hear how you guys have your tank set up. Send me pictures. And as always, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. It helps out the channel. And thank you, Alex. We love you. And thanks for watching, guys. See you later.